I took silent revenge on the man who stole my wife, and then took everything else. He ran a charity for vulnerable women. I uncovered what he really did behind closed doors with my wife, and turned his empire into ashes. I came back to Savannah in late October. The sky was the same brittle blue I remembered from childhood, but the air felt heavier, like it didn't want me here. Lisbon hadn't ended well. They called it a strategic reallocation of leadership, but it was termination. Stripped of access, walked out with a half-full box of things I didn't even want. 18 years in international investment, and the last image they'll remember of me is fumbling with a badge at the exit. I didn't tell Marissa everything, just that the company was shifting focus, and I'd be stateside for a while. She didn't ask many questions. Her voice on the phone was warm but distracted. The house looked the same from the outside, white shutters, blue hydrangeas by the porch. But when I stepped in, something felt wrong. Not dramatically, just off. The living room was cluttered, boxes half unpacked, shoes by the couch, a faint smell of something left too long in the trash. The kitchen was clean but sterile, like it hadn't been used for real cooking in weeks. Our daughter's backpack sat slumped in a corner, like it had been dropped mid-motion and forgotten. Marissa came downstairs wearing one of those soft cashmere wraps she always traveled in. Her hair was pinned up loosely, no makeup. She looked good, but tired. "Hey," she said, no kiss. Just a long look, then a nod. "You're early." My flight landed ahead of schedule. She didn't respond, just turned toward the kitchen and said something about leftovers. I stood there in the foyer with my suitcase still at my feet, taking in the silence. No music, no smell of coffee, no welcome home sign from the kids. It wasn't hostility. That would have been easier. It was indifference. At dinner, we sat at the table like acquaintances. The kids told me about school, Halloween plans, a field trip to the aquarium. Marissa mostly listened. I watched her from across the table. How she smiled at the right moments, nodded, touched their shoulders, but not mine. After they went to bed, I tried to unpack. The drawers in our bedroom were filled with new things. Her side of the closet was crowded with dresses I didn't recognize. Scarves, heels, coats. None of them mine had been moved to make room. I took my suitcase into the guest room. Marissa passed by in the hallway as I stood in the doorway, suitcase still unzipped. "You don't have to sleep in there," she said. But it wasn't an invitation, just a statement. "I figured I'd let you get your rest," I said. She nodded once, then walked away. That night I lay awake in the guest bed, listening to the creaks of a house that no longer sounded familiar. Every corner felt rearranged, not physically, psychologically. There were new pictures on the walls, portraits of her and the kids at a fundraiser, some event for the foundation. Lucas Hale's name was printed on a plaque in one photo. I remembered him vaguely. CEO, philanthropist, the face of the Haven Initiative. He'd once been on the cover of Forbes Impact. I stared at the photo. Marissa was standing next to him, smiling. The kind of smile you give when you're impressed, or trying to impress someone else. I didn't like the feeling that crept in, but I also didn't confront it. Not yet. Instead, I kept unpacking in silence, like a man setting up camp in someone else's home. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Of course, she'd be spending more time at work. Nonprofits run on relationships, and Marissa was good at those. And Lucas Hale? He was the face of half the gala invites in Savannah, a walking cause in designer suits. It made sense they'd be close. They were both charming, strategic, polished. But still, I noticed things. Little things, like how she always dressed differently when she said she had working dinners. Not more revealing, just considered. Soft colors, silk blouses, perfume she never wore for me, or how she started putting her phone face down on the table. The first real shift came from the kids. One night, over takeout, our son mentioned, "We had ice cream with Mr. Hale and Ava after the museum." I looked up from my noodles. "Who?" "Lucas," Marissa said casually, not looking up. "He brought his daughter to the event. The kids had fun." Didn't realize he was part of the family outings now. She gave a small laugh. "It wasn't planned. It just happened." But it happened again. A week later, our daughter talked about how Mr. Hale has a really cool boat. Another time she mentioned Ava sleeping over. Marissa smiled, brushing it off. "They're just kids, and Lucas is harmless. He's good with them." I didn't push, not yet. Instead, I started watching her social media. Her Instagram feed, once filled with photos of the kids, morning lattes, and family beach days, had taken a more curated turn. Pictures of her at events, always angled just right. A shared table, Lucas's hand in the background holding a glass of wine. Tags from other board members. Another incredible night with the Hale Foundation family. She never posted pictures of us, not anymore. One night, while she was asleep, I opened her laptop. It wasn't locked. I didn't go into her messages, not yet, just her calendar. 3 events in the past month marked as board prep, all at restaurants. One in Charleston, one marked Lighthouse House check-in with LH. LH Lucas Hale. When I asked about her travel the next day, she answered easily. "Standard site visits. Donors like to see where the money goes." "Do they usually take you to 5-star hotels after?" She didn't blink. "It's comped through the foundation, nothing inappropriate, if that's what you're asking." I didn't ask. "No," she said. "But you implied." I dropped it, but my mind didn't. That week, I started keeping a small notebook in my briefcase, something discreet. I didn't write accusations, just observations, times, dates, names, photos I found tagged, even if she wasn't in them directly. Conversations with the kids, her shifts in tone. I wasn't building a case, not yet. I was building a map, because whatever this was, it wasn't nothing. There's a look people have when they're hiding something. Not guilt, that's easy to spot. But performance. That need to narrate their day before you ask. That smile that lands half a second too late. That edge in their voice when you didn't even raise yours. Marissa had that now. She was warm, attentive, sometimes even playful. But it was all wrapped in the packaging of something meant to be observed, not felt. I couldn't tell if she was overcompensating or just bored with pretending. I caught her once, texting in the hallway outside our bedroom. When I walked up, she lowered the phone like she'd finished, smiled too quickly. "It's just work." I nodded. But I kept a mental photo of the screen, white background, long message, no emojis. Whoever it wasn't casual. Still, I said nothing, because the silence was telling me more than her words ever could. At first, the Haven Initiative seemed above suspicion. On paper, it was a sanctuary, a private foundation supporting at-risk young women, scholarships, housing assistance, mentorship, a sleek, modern site. High-production videos with uplifting piano music and tearful success stories. Lucas Hale was everywhere, shaking hands, giving interviews, pledging second chances. But good branding doesn't make something good. I started looking deeper when I noticed how Marissa spoke about the foundation. The language changed. It wasn't the work anymore. It was the mission. She called Lucas visionary. Said things like, "You don't see it yet, but he's reshaping how charity functions." It was almost religious. I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend in Savannah. It felt paranoid, even to me. But something inside kept pressing, a quiet, low burn I couldn't ignore. The investigator, Jamie Knox, was a former cop. Efficient, dry, discreet. Within a week, he sent me a file. Locked folder, password protected. Inside, screenshots, social media links, chat transcripts, audio clips. None of it explosive, but all of it wrong. A TikTok post from a girl who used to be part of the Haven program. Blurred face, altered voice, talking about gifts with strings. About being offered more comfortable housing in exchange for friendlier boundaries. She never said Lucas's name. She didn't have to. A Reddit thread, buried, where another woman described being mentored out of her trauma by someone she called LH, then ghosted when she refused to meet after hours. One of the most damning items, a long Facebook post from a former staffer. It had only 6 likes. The account had since been deleted, but the post was still there in the archive. She wrote, "There's a difference between rescuing and collecting. I left because I didn't want to be part of the difference anymore." Jamie flagged that line. So did I. I found myself reading it again and again, like some kind of mantra. Rescuing versus collecting. It fit too well. The parties. The girls from the program who were suddenly invited to board events. Photos of them dressed up, smiling with donors, never with names. One tagged location at a private coastal home owned by a shell company linked back to Hale Group Capital. None of it was illegal, but none of it was clean. And suddenly everything at home snapped into sharper focus. Marissa's worshipful tone, the emotional distance, the family events where Lucas just happened to be present, the travel booked last minute, the cash donations processed through side accounts. This wasn't just a man sleeping with my wife. This was a man who controlled her. And worse, he did it for sport, for image, for leverage, not love. I sat in my office that night long after the kids were asleep. Jamie had also included one audio file, a radio show, local station, call-in format. A woman called anonymously, her voice trembling. He always said it was about healing, that I was being difficult, ungrateful. He paid my rent. He said I owed him a connection. I didn't know how to say no without losing everything. The host responded with concern, promised someone would look into it. The call ended. The show moved on. And I sat there, stomach tight, jaw locked, and I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just felt something shift inside me. Because now, it wasn't just personal. Lucas Hale hadn't just stolen my marriage. He'd built an empire of silence and dressed it in charity. And I was going to break it. I didn't go to the press. Not directly. That would have made it about me. And this wasn't about me anymore. It started small. One message to a local Facebook group where former Haven staff sometimes posted event photos. I created a burner account. New name, stock profile picture, 0 connections. The post was simple. Has anyone else heard rumors about girls being offered housing in exchange for private mentorship with senior board members? Asking because I have a friend who's scared to speak. 24 hours, nothing. 48 hours, 3 DMS. 5 days. A thread started by someone named at Lighthouse Truth with a single sentence, "I always wondered if it was just me." From there, it spread, slowly, organically, like mold finding the corners of a room no one cleaned properly. Next was the local radio station, WTKS Savannah. They ran a nighttime show, half call-in therapy, half gossip. I sent them the audio clip Jamie Knox had uncovered, the call from the woman who whispered about owing connection to the man who paid her rent. I didn't edit it, didn't even introduce it. I just emailed the raw file with the subject line, "You should play this." They aired it 2 nights later at 11:47 p.m. and then opened the lines. 2 calls, then 4, then 7. Women with shaky voices, no names. Stories that didn't use abuse, but described everything but the word. He said he was helping me process trust. I was in recovery. I thought it was real. He only started pulling back when I wouldn't travel with him anymore. WTKS clipped the segment and put it on Facebook. I shared it under 2 fake accounts, tagging local reporters, a few feminist pages, and quietly, SF24, the city's independent news outlet known for chasing things bigger networks avoided. The clip hit 10,000 views in a week. Then someone, not me, reposted it on TikTok. But this time, the video was stitched with a blurred face and an altered voice saying, "I signed an NDA, but he can't stop me from saying how it felt." The girl never said Lucas's name, but she described his office, his smell, his signature smile, the way he pressed his hand against her lower back when saying goodbye, the watch he always wore. The comments exploded. "This sounds like Lucas Hale. The foundation guy?" I knew something was off. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Other people were doing the work now. It wasn't a takedown, not yet. But it was a fracture, and fractures grow. That week, I walked past Marissa in the kitchen while she scrolled her phone, brow furrowed. She didn't say anything, just stared down at a headline I caught a glimpse of. "Is the lighthouse too bright? Former residents question charity's methods." She saw me looking and turned the screen away. "Just rumors," she said. "Some people hate seeing good men succeed." I didn't answer. I poured my coffee and left the room. She didn't follow me. At night, I tracked the hashtags: the Haven Initiative, Silent Girls, Lighthouse Shadows, each one more crowded by the hour. I wasn't reckless. I sent everything through proxies, VPNs, cloud dumps timed across time zones. I gave just enough to stir questions, not enough to make the whole story collapse in on me. Because I knew Lucas. He wouldn't go down from one accusation. He'd need a pattern, a chorus, not a solo. And that's what I gave the world. Every whisper, every breadcrumb, every painful, buried detail that had once been confined to private chats and deleted posts now had space to breathe. And I watched. From the quiet of my living room, from the edge of Layla's soccer practice, from a distance that kept me sane. I watched as the man who smiled in every photo, hand on someone's shoulder, camera-ready charm, started showing up with less frequency and more press statements. No denials. Just, "We take all allegations seriously." I knew what was coming. And I wasn't done. She came home late, not unusual. It was always a board meeting or a fundraiser or some donor cocktail hour that never seemed to end before midnight. Tonight she looked tired, hair slightly undone, shoes in hand, phone pressed to her chest like she'd just silenced something mid-call. I waited in the living room. No lights, just the standing lamp beside the bookshelf. I wanted her to walk into the quiet, not the drama. She didn't see me at first. She jumped when I spoke. "Close the door, Marissa." She froze in place, then turned slowly. "You scared me." I nodded to the chair across from me. "Sit." She hesitated, then obeyed. She wasn't used to this tone from me. I wasn't either. I reached for the folder on the coffee table. Nothing fancy, just a manila envelope. She glanced at it, then back at me. "What is that?" "Proof," I said. She didn't ask of what. She already knew. I slid the folder toward her. She didn't open it right away. When she did, her fingers trembled. Inside were the printed screenshots, photos of her and Lucas, ones never posted publicly. Her hand on his chest at a retreat, a dinner in Charleston, a blurry image from a boat, her face pressed close to his. Then messages, some mundane, some unmistakable. "I'll miss the way you smell tonight." "He's home, but he doesn't matter. You're the only one who actually sees me." She didn't speak. Her lips parted slightly, like a breath had gotten stuck halfway out. When she finally looked up, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Edward, I—" "No," I said, not loud, not cruel, just final. "Don't try." She closed the folder slowly. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. "It was just—" "Stop." "I felt empty," she said, eyes already glistening. "You were always gone. I didn't know how to be important to you anymore." I nodded. "I tried to fill the space," she said. "That's all this was. Space." I looked at her carefully. "You filled it with someone who exploits women for a living." She shook her head. "I didn't know." "Yes, you did," I said. "You just didn't want to look." A pause. A long, aching pause. And then she broke. Shoulders curling inward, hands to her face. A sob that started silent and cracked halfway up her throat. I sat still. No touch, no words. She cried for 10 minutes. I let her. Maybe she needed it. Maybe I did too. But I didn't come here for catharsis. "I want you out of the house," I said quietly when she finally calmed. She blinked. "What?" 48 hours, I said. "Pack your things. Speak to your lawyer. I've already spoken to mine." "Edward." "You don't live here anymore," I said. "You live in the world you chose." She reached for me across the table, almost by instinct. I stood before she could touch me. "You don't get to grieve what you destroyed," I said. The words came from someplace hollow, not from anger, from clarity. "I'm not going to fight you," she said, her voice wrecked. Please don't shut me out from the kids." "You already did," I replied. That one landed. She looked like she'd been slapped. But I didn't take it back. I walked upstairs, slow, measured. The door clicked behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bed now, and exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for months. Below me, I heard her moving through the house, opening drawers, closing them, a bag being unzipped, the sound of her leaving. Finally. I filed the papers the following Monday. No announcement, no confrontation, just a courier, a timestamp, and a process that had already begun long before she received the envelope. My attorney, meticulous, relentless, moved quickly. We had dates, evidence, timelines. The photos, the messages, her absence, her admission, everything folded into a structure she couldn't deny. There was no dramatic courtroom battle, no screaming, no last-minute confessions. Marissa didn't have a case, just a look in her eyes like she was watching her own reflection fade in real time. The kids stayed with me. That was the only thing that mattered. I didn't poison them against her. I didn't have to. Children don't need full explanations to sense what's been broken. They just feel the shift, like a window left open in winter. Layla stopped asking when her mother was coming home. James started checking on me at night, just standing in the doorway, as if to be sure I was still there. They adjusted faster than I expected. That hurt more than I thought it would. Then came the second part. The part that wasn't about survival. The part about reclamation. The Lighthouse House, the coastal property tied to Lucas's foundation, had been quietly put up for private sale. Probably in an effort to liquidate assets before further heat landed. I bought it, outright, cash. The agent didn't even flinch when I offered 6% over asking. She just smiled and said, "The seller's eager to close." They didn't know who I was, not really. Just another suit with capital and clean paperwork. I toured the house alone, a week before closing. It was beautiful in that curated, soulless way. Wide windows, soft modern furniture, curated scent diffusers that smelled like lavender and forgetting. I stood in the main bedroom, the one with the balcony, the one from the photo. I could almost see them there. I didn't flinch. The day I took the keys, I made one call. to a woman named Reina Patel, a local activist who'd spent the last decade building underfunded housing programs for women with nowhere to go after court proceedings ended. I'd read about her in an op-ed once. She spoke plainly, didn't smile much. That made me trust her. I have a property, I told her. It has a name I want erased. I want it rebuilt as something real. She met me the next morning, walked the space, took notes, asked sharp questions. Then she nodded. "We can do this," she said. "But it'll need full detachment from its former identity." "Good," I said. "Burn it." We refiled under a new LLC, repainted, rebuilt, removed every trace of the Haven Initiative from the walls, the paperwork, the history. No plaques, no brochures, no photos of smiling men in suits. Just a new name, Harbor South. One woman arrived within the first 2 weeks, mid-20s, tired eyes, a child on her hip. No press, no fanfare, just safety. I didn't need credit. I just needed it to exist. Meanwhile, Lucas Hale was unraveling by inches. More posts, more interviews. A former staff member went on record with SF24. A podcaster covered the story under the title, "The Lighthouse That Burned Too Bright." Hale issued denials, sued one of the girls. The suit was dropped after 7 days. The cracks were showing. And Marissa? She emailed once. Just a line. "Was this always your plan?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because yes was no longer something I needed to explain. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't grieving. I was simply finishing something, and it felt like peace. 3 years have passed. Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like when she was honest. Not warm or charming. Anyone can fake that. But honest. Before all the curated sentences and cause-driven performances. Before Lucas. Before the foundation swallowed her whole. The kids are older now. Layla's taller than her mother. James has my quiet streak, but his mother's eyes. They talk less about her these days. When they do, it's brief, distant. She visits on birthdays, sends gifts through assistants, tries hard to seem present without being present. I don't interfere. She chose her life. She built a separate one, piece by piece. Somewhere in Charleston now, I think. Maybe Atlanta. Someone said she remarried. I didn't ask for details. It doesn't matter. The house is quiet, but it's ours. The kids know what it is to have consistency. They know I show up. They know they can trust the space they live in. That's more than I had growing up. I still go by Harbor South every few weeks. Quietly. No board meetings, no ribbon cuttings. Just a walkthrough. I nod to the women at the desk, ask if anything's needed. Some know who I am. Most don't. That's how I prefer it. A small brass plaque hangs by the front door now. Margaret's Harbor, in memory of the women who gave us their strength. My mother's name. She would have liked it there. She was never loud, but she knew how to keep people standing, even when she wasn't standing much herself. Some days I sit in the back garden, the one they built where the old deck used to be, and just listen. To the low voices, the quiet footsteps, the water fountain. Real peace has no music. It just doesn't press against you. And yet, I'd be lying if I said the silence inside me is peace. It's just what's left. I won. I kept custody. I retained every asset. I rebuilt my career. Clients came back. I was even offered a speaking gig last fall on high-performance recovery. I declined. What would I say? That revenge works? That justice doesn't heal, it just rearranges? I carry myself differently now. Straighter, maybe. More aware of where I place my energy, my trust. But I also carry weight. Not regret exactly, but something duller. A kind of, emotional scar tissue. It doesn't ache, but I can feel the shape of it when I move. I haven't dated much. Not seriously. Not because I'm bitter. Because I don't feel like giving anyone the blueprint again. Not yet. People say I did the right thing, that I turned something awful into something good. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's just what we say to make the wait feel purposeful. Marissa hasn't contacted me in almost a year. The last message was a forwarded article about a tech grant going to Harbor South. No note, no signature, just the link. Maybe that was her way of saying she sees it. Maybe she doesn't. I don't replay it anymore, not her betrayal. Not the nights I locked the guest room door. Not the sound of her crying when she realized I was done listening. Some things you bury. Some things bury themselves. But sometimes when the house is quiet and the kids are asleep and the emails are finally shut, I sit on the back steps and wonder what I'd be if it hadn't happened. Not who I'd still be married to, but who I would have been without the burn, without the unraveling, without the need to turn truth into evidence. I don't think that version of me exists anymore. And maybe that's okay. What remains is enough. It has to be.